Welcome back to the third in our series of videos where we rate all 373 Coronation Street regulars from across the years using Corriepedia's Ultimate Character Survey. You can find out more about that in the link below, and while you're down there, why not give us a like and a subscribe too. Now, the 1970s in Coronation Street were all about big characters, big glasses and big hair. In fact, Ray Langton was so far in advance of his time that he popularised the Lockdown look 50 years early. Today, we're going to be having a look at all the characters that made their debut in the 70s. And who's first? I don't really know. Right, so we're into the 1970s. And if you just, if you've been keeping up with the podcast, then you'll have heard, hopefully, our discussion of the 1970s DVDs that we did last week on the podcast. So these characters are fairly fresh on our minds, aren't they?
Yeah, I know everything there is to know about the 70s. Ask me anything. Mavis was in the 70s.
She was. Good start. And I imagine that there might be some repetition here between here and that last discussion as well, so forgive us if you've heard some of this before, but you never know, maybe people listen to this that haven't heard it on the podcast. I don't know. Now,
maybe they just love listening to us.
Maybe. Now, one thing about the 70s, I imagine this discussion is going to be a lot shorter than some of the others because there's only a page worth of characters. So either it means they didn't introduce very many characters in the 70s, or the characters they did introduce are either still in the show or villains. I don't know.
Ooh, so good point.
We'll see as we get there. But as I alluded to in my intro, we've got Mavis to start off with. So Gemma, and also keeping up with the people who are listening as well. This is mostly Gemma voting, but there might be some ones there that I need to give her a little bit of a helping hand on if their golden periods are post 1970s. So Gemma, Mavis, like, hate, or I don't really know.
You already said that in the intro.
It's all right.
Okay, right. So Mavis Walton, I know, is a big name, and I think that she really comes into her own in the 80s and the 90s.
I think she does, and we've
seen...
The
70s was not a golden era for Mavis Walton.
And she was in it from quite early on in the 70s as well, wasn't she? So we've seen almost a decade of her. I've still really enjoyed her, but with some of the characters that do have their golden years later on, sometimes I'm, envisaging that version of them as I'm watching their less golden periods. But I've still loved seeing the relationship between her and Rita, and I liked her job interview where she had the hiccups. Loved the stuff with her and Jerry Booth, and now
her and Jerry were so precious. And I think Mavis is one of these characters who's better as a pairing with other characters.
Yes, I would definitely agree with you there.
By herself, but with Jerry, she was lovely. With Rita, she's hilarious.
And she does go on to be it with Derek, although
with
in
Derek,
the 70s we haven't seen a whole lot of it. She's under the thumb of it. He's very pompous, isn't he?
He is so
treats her pretty badly.
But
because she's so mousy and weak, she kind of puts up with it, doesn't she? Yeah. Same with Rita, really. Rita's a massive ass to Mavis.
She is.
But as a doormat, she's still quite a fun character to watch.
The thing is, some of these characters that I haven't seen in the 80s and the 90s, I am purely going off of what I've seen in the 70s. And I think if you had asked somebody in 1979, what do you think of Mavis Walton as a character, I genuinely don't think they would have given her more than a 3.
Really?
But I do know that she goes on to be a very iconic character.
Yeah.
Who was a massive part of Coronation Street history. I just think it was a slow start, and I really do think that it took them a while to work out this partnership between her and Derek to establish them as really interesting.
Are you going for a 3?
I do not also think it's really fascinating that Derek and Mavis Walton both had Coronation Street surnames as their actor surnames, like in real life.
Barlow and Baldwin.
Thelma Barlow and Peter Baldwin. Really funny that
funny.
They would go on to become big names.
Yeah. Another double act almost with Barlow and Baldwin.
Well,
rivals.
If I was going to say for the 70s as a whole, Mavis would get 3 and Derek would get a 2.
Wow.
I'm sorry, but
is that what you're going to go for?
I'm a disco queen, and that's what I think.
This is the era of disco. Yeah, you're right. I mean, can I just say, I think I'd have to. I'd be torn about whether to give both of them 4s or 5s. I think Mavis is a bit more iconic than for me. It might be 5 for Mavis and 4 for Derek, because I do love them both. And in the 80s and early 90s as well, particularly with the rivalry with Des next door and everything, they provide an awful lot of humour, I think.
I'm telling you that in the 70s, judging from the selection we have been given on the Coronation Street DVDs, that is what they deserve.
I can totally see it with Derek, because he hasn't been in it a whole lot so far in the 70s. He's a massive mummy's boy. He is pompous. They've not fully developed his character
But I'm giving them that under the understanding that they deserve a higher score.
Fair enough.
But I haven't seen it yet.
Fair enough. Now, Ivy Tilsley, this is going to be another similar one, isn't it? Because we've seen more of her in the latter years of the 1970s, but her golden age again is in the 1980s, early 90s. I absolutely adore Ivy Tilsley, and I think a lot of that has come from watching the 1989 to 1994 period, or was it 95? I can't remember when she bowed out. But I can see from a lot of the 1970s she was a very minor character, and it's only been in 1979 when, after Gail and Brian got engaged, that she had a bit of a personality transplant and turned into the harridan that she was later so famous for.
They didn't know who Ivy Tilsley was in the 70s. It took them a while to really get what she was about, and it was only because she was a secondary character to the romance between Gail and Brian.
Yeah, that's right. And then they decided, right, mother-in-law from hell.
Yeah, exactly.
But until then, she'd been factory girl. She'd been quite glam, hadn't she? And we'd seen snippets
Dolly
of
Bird.
her. Totally.
I honestly cannot reconcile the Ivy that they produced at the beginning with the Ivy that she became. There was no interstitial period. On the discs, I'm going to say again, I didn't get to see the whole thing, but it didn't feel as though we eased into Ivy becoming a mother-in-law from hell, or there was no warning. She didn't flip a switch and suddenly, like, one minute she is a good time girl who works at the factory,
friend to Vera,
and the next minute she is just moaning on about how much she hates her son's new...
What's been your first impression of the new Ivy, the Ivy that she sticks with? Are you enjoying watching her for being a massive, obstacle for Brian and Gail? Or
not really, because like you say, she was an obstacle for Brian and Gail. She wasn't really a character in her own right. I don't really get what her point was. If I had sympathised with her a bit more, I could maybe have understood. I think because we were sympathising with Gail more. Gail was the central character of the story. The fact that Ivy came in as the foil to Gail's happiness means it's difficult to sympathise with her.
Yeah, no. The last chunk of ITV3 classic Corrie that I've been watching has been, as I say, 1989 to early 90s, and I've sympathised with her massively because this is in the wake of Brian's death. So I've got an awful lot of sympathy for her, and she lost her husband, she lost her son, and.
Don't tell me
her religion is
gone.
telling her. I don't think he lasts a whole lot longer.
What happened to Bert?
You have to wait and see with that one as well. But she for me would be 4 or 5 as well. But as I've already voted, and this is you registering your votes, what are you going for, Jem?
In the 70s, Ivy is a 3.
Okay, that's not bad. I'll allow that.
I don't think she does. I mean, she's a 2.5.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that don't like Ivy at all, and even in her later years, the bits that I really like her with, people can't be dealing with her attitude and the way she treats Gail and her moralistic attitude. But so I think that there'd be a few others that would give her 3, having seen her full run. But difficult one for me and for you, really, because I've not seen a whole lot of him in the 80s. I can't remember when in the 80s he dies, but I'm going to say mid. You've only seen snippets of him, haven't you? What's your first impressions?
Very dull. It could be anybody, could be nobody, could be a ghost, could be a cobble cut out of a man.
He seems to be a bit in the vein of put upon husband, doesn't he? He knows that his wife is
he's the
a bit of a
henpecked
cow.
husband.
Yeah, exactly, and he just has to sigh and bear it and apologise for her afterwards.
Very irritating as a concept, to be a henpecked husband who can't stand up to anything because he knows his wife is right, but he doesn't want to be unpopular, so he pretends that she's just being a cow, and he can wash his hands of all the fallout.
So what are you going for then?
I mean, 1 or a 2.
I'll let it down to you,
He's
darling.
like a 1.5.
I'm trying to click here, but...
One.
Oh,
One.
I clicked in the middle and
He's
one
a nothing.
highlighted,
He's
so...
a nothing man.
There we go. Oh,
Look
poor
at his
Peter
face and his
Dudley.
hair.
Oh, that's so sad.
Well,
Brian, oh, a heartthrob, Gemma.
can't say I...
Don't just go by looks. I know
mean,
look at that
It's
gorgeous...
a 5 out of 5 for looks,
Buffon.
obviously. He looks like a poodle who's turned into a concerned man.
Yeah.
Perhaps the dog park is going to be closed. I don't know. But Brian, again, is a bit of a cipher. He means nothing to me. He is a stand-in for someone that you might know in real life, perhaps. You know, he doesn't make a great impression on me.
He's not really had much opportunity. We've seen him meet Gail, get engaged to Gail, get married to Gail, but we haven't seen any of the blossoming romance in between there, have we?
Gail's main attraction to Brian is literally his looks.
It seems to be.
And unfortunately,
his muscles,
he is
his looks,
very
his
much
hair.
bound up in the 70s, which is not a kind era for anybody in terms of the looks department. I can't give him a lot. I mean, I don't think he deserves much more than a 1. His dad got a 1,
for
but at
Brian.
least, I don't know, Brian.
But remember, we're talking about
around.
iconicness of this character, and you've got to admit that Brian, as you know, even though you haven't watched his time on Coronation Street, has got some kind of iconic status, if only for his death.
No, I don't think that counts then.
And his post-death with Ivy.
1.
God, that's harsh. Brian Tilsley 1. Sorry, Chris
Rubbish.
Quinton. Tell you what, 70s was maybe not a golden era in terms of new characters for you, is it? Idak Laughs.
I still don't know who Idak Laughs is.
She's been hanging around at the factory, but she did
Who
show
is
up on.
she?
She did show up on ITV Classic Coronation Street recently, and I said, "Look, there's Ida. She
made a
comes back in
return.
the 90s after Ivy dies."
You did point her out to me, and I went, oh yeah, it's Idak Laughs, and I was thinking, who is Idak Laughs?
She's the factory woman. I'm not going to say girl because she's getting on a bit with the raven black hair. That's all you need to know.
1.
Ah. Yeah, maybe. No, I wouldn't
know
give
who
her a
she
1.
is.
I wouldn't give her a 1. Because I've seen some bits of her in the 80s and 90s as well. But she's certainly a side character. There aren't. I'm just trying to think who there is in the factory at the moment that is literally there just to be a factory person. I can't think if there's anyone. At least everybody is. I mean, Izzy maybe, but she's still a character they're just underusing. But over the years, they have had characters in the factory that are literally just there to fill the numbers, haven't they? I'm thinking. Sonia was one, and I don't know, but yeah, sadly, I would have to be on the lower side for you as well. Now we've got 2 utter icons here, Gemma. You've seen
This is hard.
tiny snippets of Jack Duckworth. Jack Duckworth has been in one episode that we've seen in the 70s because he appears at Gail and Brian's wedding, doesn't he? Bizarrely, I don't think
Just
he was
looking
needed.
grumpy. He didn't say a line.
No, he didn't.
He just sat next to her.
And Vera tells, I can't remember who
Looking
she's
annoyed.
talking to behind her, saying, "Oh, this is my husband Jack." I don't really know why he was there.
Didn't she also have different stories about who she was married to?
No, that was
previously?
Ivy.
Okay.
Ivy had a variety of husbands before they settled on Bert. But you've seen an awful lot of not Gail, we're talking about Jack and Vera in the 2010s. You've had a good 10-year run with these two.
Have I?
Yeah.
Okay.
Both utterly iconic. No, actually, no. Jack's was an iconic death, and Vera was memorable-ish but sad, just falling asleep on a chair.
It was very sad.
But Jack's, that's one of my favourite deaths ever on Coronation Street.
I'm really looking forward to learning more about Vera and Jack.
Don't you think they're just fun, aren't they? Although I suppose in the era that you've watched, in the late 2010s, they're, the old people.
I don't know. Listen, I don't remember a lot about them. I'm going to be honest.
Are you gonna?
I'm not gonna lie. I never want to lie on the podcast and pretend I know something I don't know.
They were the gran and granddad surrogate to Tyrone, weren't they?
I have watched them in the show. I don't remember a lot about them, and I know that's going to make people mad. But in the 70s, I will also say that they were not a very significant couple.
No,
they weren't significant as a couple at all.
Certainly not Jack.
Jack basically was. I mean, Will Tarney was an extra.
Yeah, he was in the background of some scenes.
He appeared in a few scenes.
So was Vera, actually. Well, sorry. Liz
Dawn.
But she wasn't Vera. She was just Liz Dawn being an extra, and then
Liz
decided
Dawn
to give her a full
turns
blown
up
job.
as like an irritating, factory worker, probably along the lines of quite a lot of factory workers that we've seen come and go over the years.
It's interesting because you say irritating, but I would say fun. But again, am I just remembering what she grows to be?
Yeah.
There was one particular scene I remember where she was having a giggle with Ivy in one of the episodes that I enjoyed. She's not irritated me at all, but you said earlier that you were bowing out for
Yeah,
these
I can't
ones.
score these characters because they deserve fives.
Well,
I haven't seen fives from them.
I'm
because
going
I
to
haven't
give them
seen
fives.
Their heyday, which was the 80s and the 90s, I'm going to say.
Utter iconic characters.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Got to be fives for me. Oh, Jack's death, it gets me every time. Speaking of icons, who have we got next? Deirdre.
Now, you can't deny... Now, I've seen lots of Deirdre.
You have. You've seen a
I've
good
got to
15
see
years.
a lot of
15 plus.
Deirdres.
She came like halfway through the 70s, did she? So you've seen a good 20 years worth of Deirdre.
She came in as a very beautiful, bespectacled, young, hot thing.
I would say
flitted from
personality
man to man.
vacuum really at the beginning. She was literally there for the looks.
I didn't really
If you like
pick
the
much up about
specs.
what she thought about anything.
No.
I think the sign of a good character is that you know them well enough to say, what would they think of this? What would they think of that? And you would be able to guess.
She was bright.
I don't know what she would think about much.
She was bright, breezy and fun. She had a good laugh, but she really came into her own for me when Ray left her, and that's when she grew a pair really, because she had to now then become the single mother. She made the decision not to go to Holland with him, to kick him out after the Janice Stubbs incident. So for that, and then obviously the lorry crash when she was looking after Tracy, and fantastic performance from Anne Kirkbride in the wake of that. We're now moving into the beginning, I would say, of her golden era in the 80s, and obviously the affair with Ken and Mike. That makes it sound like those two had an affair, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is imminent.
Anne Kirkbride is always a compelling and charismatic actress. I thought, yeah, I'm going to give her a 5. And I think people might be mad because I didn't immediately give Jack and Vera a 5.
You've seen more Deirdre.
I've seen more Deirdre, and Jack and Vera were sort of coasting when I saw them, and that's fine.
And she's had some big stories as well, hasn't she? The Free the Weatherfield one and all that.
They were riding on a well-deserved reputation that unfortunately I had no knowledge of. So
one of the scenes that's kind of come to light to me in the last few years is that scene where she's out in the Ginnel with Dev in mid to early 2000s, and she's smoking her fag and she's saying, oh, I've lived all my life on this street, I was born just a couple of streets over there, and this is my life. It's not glamorous, but you know the scene I mean?
Yeah.
That's a real iconic. I think it's a Jonathan Harvey, or is it?
She's got some really good lines. She's got some great scenes. I'll give it to him. She's got some amazing storylines.
And a real legacy.
A lot into a very short, not very short, but it was cut short.
Totally.
Performance.
The relationship with Blanche.
Brilliant.
Tracy as well. She lives on in a way through Tracy. Some certain aspects of her.
Like to.
Speaking of Blanche.
You've got to put 5 in.
Oh, I forgot to put 5 for my Deirdre, you're right.
Now, Blanche Hunt is one of these characters who does not have a lot of storylines. She's not in every scene. She just crops up every now and then, and she adds a bit of spice. So I'm going to give her a 5 because I think maybe it's not spice, maybe it's salt. You need a bit of seasoning, and everything can't be salt.
It's something bitter, I'll tell you that.
If you don't have it on your food, you miss it.
Yeah.
And Blanche was such a fantastic character. She was just there to interject some kind of
nasty comment or observation.
She was just what everyone wishes they could say in a given moment. She was like the voice of the people who wanted to be liked, but Blanche didn't care about that.
No.
And she was introduced in the 70s. And
you saw shades of it there, but not really.
She was played by Maggie Jones the entire time, apart from one performance, because the actress who was previously cast as Blanche unfortunately had a sad ending.
Oh yeah.
So she wasn't the original, but she certainly was the only Blanche that we remember.
Yeah. it does make me wonder whether she would be remembered in any of the same way if the original actress had stayed on. It was all about Maggie Jones's delivery.
I can't say there was much of a ghost of Blanche as she was to become in the 70s. She wasn't in it a lot.
She wasn't. She was. I found it fascinating seeing her behind the bar. I never imagined Blanche as a barmaid, but she took over sometimes, didn't she, when Annie wasn't around?
She was an acerbic yet obliging woman.
Yeah.
Who tried to steer her daughter to the right path, didn't really get there with her.
Didn't really take well to Ray.
She wasn't sort of a great presence in the 70s, but we know that she becomes an icon.
It's the 90s reinvention of Blanche that really sets her up there as legendary Corrie battle axe.
And I can attest to my own personal experience of Blanche, of thinking, yes, Blanche was absolutely wonderful. She definitely deserves a 5 out of 5.
Oh, now this one's a difficult one because he's only made 1 or 2 appearances. I think not just on our disc, but at all in the 70s. Alec Gilroy appeared in, I'm going to say, the Capricorn Club. It might have been the Gatsby, I can't remember, as the shady agent of Rita's, wasn't he? And he's a nasty piece of work. But I wouldn't say that from his initial appearances. They didn't want him to really stand out, did they? He was just a stereotypical, slimy, sleazy agent.
He was like, I've forgotten the name of the guy. I can't even say it. In the original Star Wars, the Jabba the Hutt. He was like Jabba the Hutt in A New Hope. He just appeared to be an annoying, foil for the main character, and then disappeared. And didn't really turn up in the 70s again. I can't score him.
His heyday is the 80s, really. But when he marries Bet, which is a really interesting relationship because it's a bit chalk and cheese, really.
Just to point this out, there's absolutely nothing of a hint of a whisper of Bet and Alec.
No, not at all. I don't even think they've shared a scene together,
be able
possibly.
To remember Alec to put him with Bet. But so I'm going to duck out.
Yeah, I'm going to go for a 4 because I've seen quite a bit of him in the 80s. He's a great comedic actor, Roy Barraclough, but doesn't play a comedic character necessarily. But just the delivery of some of his lines, just how vile, but he can be.
Vile, is he?
No, maybe that's not the right word. Maybe that's too strong. He only cares about number one, and he doesn't care about who he destroys along the way. Similar to Mike Baldwin, it's
nothing about
all about the business
at all. Apart from he was married to Bet, and I assume she liked him, and he looks like that.
If he could get one over on you for personal gain, he would. And,
interesting.
And some of the times you're there on his side, go Alec. And other times I can't believe. Yeah, he is kind of, but he's not quite so. Mike has got the grin, hasn't he? He's not
as charming. Is what he's trying to say.
He'll stand back and laugh as he watches Ken have some kind of unfortunate drama. I don't think Alec would. He'd just kind of stand there with his cigar in his hand, kind of raising an eyebrow. Yeah, it's not exactly the same. You'll see.
I'll see indeed.
I'm going to give him a 4 because I would say that he is a bit of an icon, but he's not right up there with everybody else. Oh, and now we go down. Norma Ford, the one with the mullet.
Norma Ford is literally only a character in my mind to carry a mullet around. I don't know what she is or what she does apart from her hair.
Yeah, literally, they could have put a wig stand in and had it hanging around behind the corner shop, and it would have done the same job for me. I can't say I know anything else about her. Did she go out with Ken for a little bit, I think. It's not been too long ago since we watched her, and she's already. I mean, at least now I can look at a picture of her and go, "That's Norma Ford," which I couldn't do 6 months ago. But I can't say anything much more about her than that. She wasn't a highlight in any of the episodes, and she's not gone down in Coronation Street history.
Sorry.
Now, this is a character that I really wanted to like, and I know she's really got her fans out there, hasn't she? Tricia Hopkins, played by Kathy Jones. But in the episodes that we saw.
Yeah, again, I can only blame the selection of episodes, although we watched a few extra ones. I can't say that she ever made an impression on me. I was excited to learn more about one of Gail's fabled flatmates and sort of fellow...
And
teeny young
she's got quite a
person.
following behind her now of like a hashtag Bring Back Trisha, hasn't she? And I don't know whether Kathy would be up for it or not, but she's still, you know, active on Twitter, so she's still in the public eye.
I wouldn't mind any of these characters who were sort of nothing characters to me to come back and reprove themselves, but I know.
I don't remember very much about her. She, out of all the Hopkins, she's the most memorable just because she stayed in it a little bit longer.
I'd give her a 2.
Disappointing.
She did do things, but I didn't care. Vera Hopkins,
let's whiz through these.
Hopkins are a difficult family to like. Kathy Staff, obviously a very iconic actress in the UK because of her work on Last of the Summer Wine, and that was the role that she went on to directly from this. I think she thought that Corrie would be a bit of a better gig for her, but she then went on to better things, really.
Yeah, with the Hopkins, they wanted to introduce a new family unit. They wanted to have a normal family that normal things would happen to.
And they tried to blackmail...
They tried to blackmail Betty, didn't they?
Betty at the end, and I don't really know what happened. I mean, all of these really get 1s.
I think so. Idris had a great accent. I do like a nice Welsh accent.
-1, I think I would, because he was the most bland of all the Hopkins.
Granny was supposed to be the new Ina Sharples, and this was introduced. They were introduced mid-70s when maybe Ina has passed her prime, you might say. But even so, you can't try and replace Ina while Ina's still there.
No, that's rude.
I kind of liked her. But I just couldn't help comparing her to Ina while she was there.
One again. I mean, they had potential, but it was, I don't know, squandered or whatever. It's difficult to say.
Ah, here we go.
Eddie Yates.
Love him.
What a revelation. Love Eddie. I was saying before about how much... I remember when Geoffrey Hughes died and everyone was talking about him and saying he was famous for Coronation Street, but he also... was in
Keeping Up Appearances,
which I used to watch as a child, and I loved him in that show. And I remember thinking he's more famous for Keeping Up Appearances. But now I'm watching Coronation Street, I understand now his legacy as Eddie Yates. I mean, Geoffrey Hughes is such a fantastic actor.
It seems so effortless as well, doesn't it?
He is charming.
He just he almost looks like he just shows up to work, says his lines, knocks it out, and
he is the Eddie Yates. He inhabits his characters. He's warm, he's engaging, he's fun, he is authentic.
He's not had to put on like any of the heavy drama so far either, has he?
He's just an extra player for Stan and Hilda, and it is surprising to me that Stan and Hilda, such a fantastic double act, could have brought into their ranks a third person
to make them even better,
and managed to use him to make everything even better than it was. It's not very often that you can accommodate an extra person to an already well working twosome, but he just slotted in effortlessly.
Effortless is the word for him.
Fantastic character. He's got such an interesting backstory. He's always got something interesting to say. He reminds me of like, in modern day terms, he reminds me a bit of Graham. Graham was a fun and he just always knows somebody who can get him out of a scrape, but not really to
or get someone else out of a scrape, and he'll say, "Oh, my mate's got this," and then that just makes their problems worse.
And it's interesting to me that quite often when we talk about iconic outfits or props or like accessories, so you've got like Deirdre's glasses and Hilda's curlers and
Ina's hairnet.
You don't very often think of male characters apart, Jack Duckworth's glasses with the tape on them. But I would say that Eddie Yates's hat is an overlooked but very iconic piece of wardrobe that immediately establishes his character to you, because it's like a deerstalk. It's like a Sherlock Holmes hat, but it is a facsimile of it that is done in a less prestigious material. So immediately you look at him and you know that he is kind of like, yes, I know what's going on, and I'm an intelligent person who can navigate the ups and downs of modern life, but it's a copy of that but
Yeah.
in a material that you would never put that hat in. Why would you make a Deerstalker hat out of knitted material? It doesn't make any sense. But that little prop just kind of sums up the whole character, doesn't it? It's like a working class kind of detective trying to work his way through his mysteries and his complications, but everything he is involved in is very low stakes. So you'd have Sherlock Holmes trying to work out what's the mystery of the Hound of the Baskervilles, and then you've got Eddie Yates trying to work out how much a chicken's worth if it can lay an egg a day. You know what I mean?
I know. When we watched through the 60s, there are a couple of characters that shocked us by how much we loved them. We weren't expecting it, like Dennis, like Minnie, like Irma, and I was worried as we were going through the 70s that we wouldn't, get that again.
Yeah.
And that everybody that we thought would be great was great, but Eddie's the treasure of the 70s for me.
He is the standout character. It's nice that he had a reputation that he lived up to. Not everyone does, but I think he gets a 5. I
would probably go 4 for Eddie, because I don't know whether he goes down as a Corrie icon in the annals of Corrie history. But I'm pleased to hear that. Fred G.
I've got such fondness for Eddie Yates.
Yeah.
Fred G. Now, I get the impression that they wanted to replace Jack Walker. I mean, it took them 10 years to work out how to do that.
Just to get another man behind the bar, basically.
I don't think they did. They needed a whipping boy for the strong
That's his
women.
job, isn't it? Yeah, he's the butt of their jokes.
The big names behind the bar. You got Annie, you got Bet, you got Betty. They needed somebody to boss around.
Yeah.
He had his little He had his little funny bits. I don't know much about him.
He's
he
just
was
he's
introduced
a nice chap.
as a sort of a tragic character who lost his wife in the
Mark Britton warehouse fire.
but he can't get more than a 3.
I think you're right. I mean, I quite enjoyed his episode when he had to get Annie from the airport and he had to use Len's van because the rover had been
he is like a
stolen or
hapless
something.
kind of guy.
He is, but he's not. I wouldn't say he's iconic,
No.
and he does disappear in the 80s and then fairly promptly gets forgotten about, I would say. But it's a shame. I think he had potential. There are some characters that just don't need to be main characters, and he's one of them.
Yeah.
So, are you going to go for 3 for him?
Yeah, 3.
Okay. Oh no! Look who's next. People are going to be mad.
I don't like Renu. I love the name because the name has personal significance to me, but apart from the fact that she's called Renu, I hate Renu.
I didn't realise until very recently that Renu was short for Irene. In fact, it might have been when we saw her in Elf's wedding.
I hate Renu.
It kind of makes sense.
Everything about her annoys me. Whenever she's in the scene, I get annoyed. I don't want to watch it. I don't know why she's there.
She's not an annoying, irritating character, is she? She's just, yeah. We described her as a bit of a Deirdre imposter.
She is. She's like, why are you there? She's like, Maggie Clegg was sweet and unimposing, but Renu just feels like she tries to make her mark, and she has, I don't know, there's nothing I like about her.
No, there's just some characters that rub you up the wrong way, and she was it. She was somebody that I was looking forward to watching, to seeing what she was like, because she I don't know how long she stays in Corrie, like 5-6 years maybe, before she meets her untimely end, and she was somebody who I'd not really seen any scenes of, so I was interested to see, so what's she going to be like then? But no, just didn't work for me.
She just annoys me. She hasn't done anything wrong. There's nothing wrong with the woman.
No, she hasn't done anything right.
Just don't like her.
She
marries Alf.
What are you getting? 2, 1?
2. Put a pole in her face.
Terry Bradshaw. He's made like 1 appearance on the DVD. Very, very minor.
Don't know who that is.
1.
Yeah, fine.
I think he worked at the Builders Yard for a little bit with Len and Ray. Boulders, not Baldrick. Mike Baldwin. Icon.
I can't score Mike.
Difficult to rate.
You might if
from what
you're
we've seen
only
so
used
far.
to watching him in the 80s and 90s, you might be quite surprised at how minimal his impact was in the 70s. And again, I have to say, I hold my hands up, it could just be the discs that we watched, it could just be the selection of the episodes that they put onto the DVDs, but his most significant contribution to the 70s was killing Ernest Bishop.
He didn't kill Ernest Bishop.
He did. He came
just
into that
walked
room
into the
like,
room.
"Ha ha ha, look at this," and then he jumps on somebody with a gun in their hands and accidentally goes off.
He doesn't have. I mean, just that face there, that
The
smarmy swagger.
Yeah,
exactly.
the swagger and the
We haven't seen a
bravado
whole lot of that, but
I know
he's
that
got
Mike
it in spades in later
embodies,
years.
and I know that he has a rivalry for the ages with Ken. Over Deirdre, and there's a massive love triangle to come, and he is, but nothing to me in the 70s.
Well, can I give him a 4?
Yeah, go on then.
Because I would say he's iconic, but he does irritate me a little bit sometimes, and I don't love him. I don't hate him, but sometimes I like he's just quite fun to watch sometimes.
Should I give him a higher mark because he's a fellow Southerner?
No, Susie Burchill. Well,
Like
copy and paste what we said about
Susie
Trisha,
Burchill
really.
and Trisha Hopkins are basically the same person.
They're famous for being Gail's friends at various points in the 70s, and I can't say a whole lot else. What does she do? She dropped a brick down a chimney.
She did more than Trisha did.
She did. She's hung around for longer. She's hung around with...
What did we give Trisha? 2?
I think we might have given her a 2.
Oh.
Or did we give her a 1? Maybe we gave Trisha a 2. Just because of she's got slightly more iconic legendary status than... some of the other Hopkinses.
I don't know, 2 or 3.
It can't
Be a 3, can it?
That's
can't
generous.
Be a 3. It's got to be 2 because you give Chesney a 3.
that's your ballpark, isn't it? Yeah, sorry, Susie, and I think you're coming to the end of your time on our discs.
She did really have some fun stories when she had them, but they were few and far between. And I also blame her, along with Gail, for the marginalisation of Elsie Tanner in the 70s.
Yeah.
Because she became basically the den mother for Gail et al. And I kind of resented them a little bit for that.
Yeah, and Susie is another one who's one half of a double act and not much else. Without Gail, I mean, Susie's already pretty much of a nothing. Without Gail, she'd be even lower than that. So, yeah, 2.
I mean, she did embody the 70s during Gail's wedding with a very, very
God, what was she
interesting
wearing?
bridesmaid outfit.
Yeah.
But if that's all you can say about somebody, then perhaps they deserve a 2.
Finally, Gemma, Steve, and this has taken quite a bit longer than I expected, really. We were taking our time this time, knowing that we didn't have many characters to cover, but Steve Fisher.
Steve Fisher, if you thought that Kirk was of no consequence because you'd only just watched it in the last few years,
Okay.
you would be even less impressed with Steve.
He's been in it for 2-3 years maybe of what we've seen, but he's just done nothing. And Steve Fisher is one of these characters that I can't say I'd even heard of, or if I had, I'd promptly forgotten him straight away afterwards before watching this.
I think the first time we saw him on the discs was him trying to get Renu to give him a tab on buying a pie for lunch.
But if you think of characters like Trisha or Susie or whatever, if you were to have asked me 6 months ago, tell me about them, I'll be like, the Gail's friends? I can't tell you much else. With Steve, I couldn't have told you anything. I'd be like, literally no clue. And he's one of the few 373 on this list that 6 months ago was like, no idea. But you know what? Now I know about him. I do have an idea who he is, and I don't care. He's just there, isn't he? Hangs around with Susie for a bit, so that's a recipe for disaster.
He's rather bland. I don't know if they were trying to reinvigorate the lads stable that they
they just wanted some younger, unattached characters.
Honestly, when they started off the show, they had a pretty strong group of diverse young male characters who I thought that people could relate to, and then they aged up and nobody replaced them. So you have Len and Ken and Ray. And then you get Ray leaves, and who's gonna be the everyman? And maybe Steve was supposed to be that, but he
really
was so
don't know.
insipid that I
Bland
don't.
as you like.
Yeah.
Sorry, he's not.
I mean, if Trisha and Susie get 2,
he's lower than that.
He's got to have a 1.
Because at least, as I said, I'd heard of Trisha and Susie, and I know they've got a bit of a following behind them. Steve Fisher, I'm sorry, he's gone. So we're ending the 70s on a bit of a low note, but with the likes of Eddie, Jack, Vera, Mavis, there were still some really strong characters that debuted in the 70s.
Really good new characters that instantly made a splash. But just like with any era of Coronation Street, you're going to get the duds and the forgettable people, and it's, again, no reflection on the actors necessarily or the writers. It's just lightning does not always strike.
No,
and you
not
can't
even on Corrie.
No, you just can't have legendary characters working in the background of the factory.
Exactly. So let's leave it there with Steve, and that's it for the 70s.
Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that. And if you haven't seen any of Coronation Street from the 1970s yourself, then I do recommend finding yourself a copy of this DVD. It's got 80 of the best episodes from the decade. It really is quite groovy, baby. You can also hear us talking a bit more about the decade on some of our other videos here on our YouTube channel. We'll be back next week to have a look at the characters who made their debut in the 1980s. I'll see you then.